Hey, everybody, welcome to Spilling the IT. We're talking about the latest happenings in the channel and what's happening in the marketplace. Adam, how are things?
Going well, Paul. Going well. Ready to kick this week off. Back from the holiday week. Got a first full week here. Looking forward to it.
Nice. So, there's a couple stories we really want to dive into, and one is from the Wall Street Journal, and Adam sent it to me, and I love it. I think it's worth diving into, and it's titled, Is It Time to Get Rid of the IT Department? It made sense in a bygone era when technology was separate from the business. Now it just hurts both.
Well, it's a little bit of a clickbaity type title, right? You look at it, you're like, get rid of the IT department. Like, everyone's talking about digital transformation. Everyone's talking about moving forward, enabling all sorts of different capabilities. But the meat of the article is really the idea that technology is in every aspect of business. It's in sales, it's in operations, it's in HR, it's in recruiting, it's in marketing. Every piece of the business is now um, wrapped up in software and capabilities and applications and different aspects of people trying to get the job done. And the legacy methodology of, hey, they used to have a Saturday Night Live sketch about it. I think it was the IT guy or the computer guy or whatever. You know, have that legacy IT department. That's not quite the way. That's not quite the way businesses are evolving these days. You need to be agile. You need to be able to move quickly. You need to be able to make business decisions quickly. And out tasking something to an IT department um, is an old way of doing things, and people need to kind of transition. At least the article argues. I didn't pay for the subscription. I just read the first couple bullets. Paul actually paid for the subscription.
I wasn't
Um,
truthfully, Adam, I wasn't going to call you out. I was being very cagey. I was saying Adam sent me this article. I was letting people assume that you read the entire thing.
yeah,
Now,
yeah.
since since you mentioned that, let me just let everybody know. Adam sent this to me and I was like, "Shoot. I don't have a Wall Street Journal subscription. Well, I better go get one cuz I don't want to be stupid and not have it." And Adam's citing all these statements and I don't have it. So, I went out and I got myself a Wall Street Journal subscription. Adam, I instantly feel more sophisticated. I
Yeah.
feel
If you
like
click on it from your LinkedIn feed, you get
mhm.
like a 5-minute preview and you can read really fast. So you get a little preview.
Okay. Well, I
Yeah.
I did not read
But
fast.
but I thought it was an interesting article and basically the we talk about it all the time. We talk about it all the time at Quest and what we do. You have business outcome conversations. You don't want to say who cares about the technology, but you only care about the technology if it's helping you to achieve something, if it's helping you to achieve a business outcome. If you're working with a marketing director, how is that marketing director trying to improve their efficiency in communicating what they're doing and what they can offer their clients? If you're talking to a CFO, how are you helping them? We did a great project around data visualization, right?
Mhm.
How do we see the inputs for our costs? How do we see our forecast for our sales models so we can build out projections appropriately? What capability are you trying to achieve? And IT departments typically they're innovative. They kind of joked in the article about some, I don't know what they call it, IT innovation department or digital innovation department, or they joked about some rebranding of the
Mhm.
IT department and how you're classifying that. Um, and I thought it was a thought-provoking article basically saying, no, you're not doing less of IT, you're putting IT um, across the board in every department, as opposed to
Mhm.
having a siloed organization of IT.
Yeah, so you blew through this article in 5 minutes. Actually, that's it wasn't a super long article, so I think you got through most of it. There were some interesting pieces, like I thought there's so many interesting quotes. One, finally, you need to consider the mindset of people working in an IT department. Most aren't doing it because they love manufacturing or insurance or banking. They're doing it because they love tech. There's
Hmm.
technology and then there's business, but that has it all wrong. These days, business is the technology and technology is the business because you mentioned it. Technology permeates every aspect of the business, and in order to succeed, you really have to have technology integrated into everything.
Yeah, and people in IT departments. So just rewind the clock about 30 years. You got into IT, and if you were in the banking industry, or if you were in healthcare, or if you were in these organizations that had a lot of money to invest in significant IT departments, then you could play with the latest and greatest tech. If we come from a Cisco background, right? We've been a Cisco Gold for a long time. If you wanted to have a CCIE, right, a very, very high certification from a network engineering perspective, there were only a couple places you could really go to put you through that kind of training, right? You could only go to maybe a healthcare organization, maybe some folks within higher education, or IT service provider. But if you wanted to be a senior network engineer, you didn't do it because you loved healthcare. You did it because you loved routing protocols, and you thought that Cisco switches and catalysts and all that kind of stuff was awesome.
Mhm.
So you weren't necessarily part of the business. You were helping to maintain, the plumbing and the operations, and you got involved in the technology. So you had to go where people were spending money on tech. Currently, everyone's spending money on tech. I mean, I just got a new iPhone the other day, and this thing is, I mean, it's crazy how much capability this one small device has that would fill rooms of servers 10,
Mhm.
15 years ago. So the technology is everywhere. Um, it's at the point of sale. It's at the consumer level. It's across the board. If you're trying to enable your business, technology needs to be a part of everything you do.
And I and you mentioned silos earlier, and that it's no longer in a silo. And I like this quote: "The idea of corralling all staff with knowledge and expertise deemed necessary to manage IT into one organizational unit no longer makes sense. Leaving IT decisions and activities to a department that is figuratively and sometimes physically far from the so-called core business is a recipe for disaster."
Yeah, it's the walled garden or ivory tower approach, right? You're
Mhm.
not you're not feet on the street. You're not involved in the day-to-day operations. I come from a little bit of a military background, right? So when we were engaged in combat operations in Iraq, we went through what was called coin theory. Basically, the idea of we transitioned from these big patrol bases where you'd launch missions and go deal with people that you never saw, and then come back to the patrol base. um, they, we transitioned when I got there, at least in '07 timeframe. We moved out into during the surge, operating in small patrol bases out amongst the population, right? You moved away from the idea of, hey, we're going to be within this big walled area, we're going to get a mission, and we're going to go out and conduct the mission, to this idea of we're going to disperse our forces, we're going to get to know the local population, and we're going to basically deal with our area of operation. The same thing's happening. They're arguing the same coin concept,
Mhm.
um, and you're not fighting an insurgency, as an IT personnel, but you're still adapting to what's happening on the ground within your individual department, which is very, very important. You got to understand, okay, what's coming in, how are these things traditionally handled? How can we improve things? What technology can we bring to bear if we're a marketing department, or if we're in
Mhm.
accounting, whatever it is, you got to be in that department caring about what's happening on a day-to-day basis in order to be relevant.
Yeah, because I mean, it's all about speed and flexibility and
Hmm.
agility. I mean, especially if there's some sort of attack, or within the IT environment, like how are you going to react to that quickly? And if having all your IT department over here siloed, coordinating everything is a real challenge.
Yeah, and you're not going to see it. You're not going to see the
Hmm.
threat. Um, you're not going to see what the competition's doing. You're just not going to be aware of it, right? So um, now you definitely have to have centralized control, and the ability to make large decisions and purchases and acquisitions and strategy, right? You have to have a strategic direction, and someone else has to help you set that strategic direction. But having operators from a technology standpoint in individual departments, around the company, is it's a smart play. It's a powerful move for a lot of people who can execute on it. There's a couple different. We covered that we did a little episode on Jocko Willink's book, The Dichotomy of Leadership, right?
Mhm.
A couple months ago, and that the ability to have a decentralized command, right? The ability to have technology leaders in different departments making decisions based on a strategic direction. That's a powerful move if you can execute it, right? You have to communicate the strategic direction. You all have to be on board with it and rowing in the same direction. Um, but yeah, I thought it was a really cool article because Quest has been executing on this for a long time, helping people with individual business objectives. And I think as we move on, you're going to see more and more of the enterprise adjusting to that model as well.
Well, when you sent me the link to this article, I was like, oh, this sounds like something Tim talks about all the time. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
huh?
yeah. The cool thing is, you see these kind of trends happen in business. You see them happen in military operations. You see them happen in development, right? There was an old way of doing waterfall development, right? There
Mhm.
now people are more in agile. You had before brigade combat teams, you had infantry divisions, and you had aviation divisions, and you had medical divisions. Then they came up with this idea like, hey, let's create what's called a brigade combat team, where you take all these parts and pieces and you put them together so you don't have to deploy this division, that division, and these guys. And then when you're in the battle, you smash them all together. You create what's called a brigade combat team. Now, I was a junior captain. I got out after 6 years in the Army, and I'm not senior at all. And it's been about 10 years since I've been involved in any of that stuff. But um, at a high level, at my very juvenile officer level, that was the concept of operations that was effective then.
Hmm.
And you see that you see people trying to make those same moves in business. You see people trying to make those same moves in IT. You got to be able to adapt quickly. How are you going to be able to adapt quickly? Well, you gotta move people who are capable out from a centralized command out to the edge. Move them into the field. Help them operate. Help them make decisions quick.
Pivoting to another article, which actually ties in really well, I think, to everything that we're discussing right now, is zero trust and how to use it, how to introduce it to customers. Lookout did a really great article for Channel Web, and it's called Partner Content: Making Zero Trust Work for Your Customers. And one of the key walkaways that a lot of people don't realize is VPN is not zero trust, which sometimes those two get confused, thinking one VPN is protection and a zero trust approach, and it's not, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so everybody started working from home. Everyone started working remote. We saw this in 2020. We continue to see it, this year going into next year. A lot of people assume that, okay, I have a VPN concentrator, or I have a way to log into my systems through a VPN from my remote work site, right? So that creates a private, right, basically a private network connection to your corporate assets and authenticates you one time, right? One time. So you log in, username and password, boom, you're in, you have access, whatever privileges you have when you're within the corporate walls, as if you were on site, you now, for the most part, have access to what you normally would, right? So think about this like I was reading this. I'm watching Narcos right now on Netflix. I don't know if you're watching Narcos 3, but
I haven't got into it yet, but
they start to talk about El Chapo. Remember El Chapo, the
mm-hmm.
dude who was in prison for a while, and then they created like a tunnel, and he just like left and was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm good, and he left. And they had some some tunnels to smuggle things across the border, and they created some interesting stuff.
Hold on a second. I
And
want to get ready for this. Are you about to compare El Chapo to VPN or zero trust?
I'm tying it all together. We're tying it all
Ooh,
together, man, and we're tying it all together.
this is
So
exciting.
you create a tunnel, right? You're at work. I'm not saying work's a prison, but you're at work,
Mm-hmm.
and you create a tunnel to the outside world that you
Mm-hmm.
connect to. He leaves, he goes through that. Now he's out in the general population. he's no longer El Chapo, the prison guy. He's whoever he needs to be in order to move freely amongst that population, right? No one's checking his passport, no one's checking his ID. Once he's through that tunnel and back into general population of everybody else, he's just blending in. So when you create a VPN tunnel, that's not a zero trust architecture. You're not authenticating. You're not checking who you are. You're not checking where you've been. You're not checking, hey, do you have the right to be here? How long have you been here? How long have you been connected? All these policies. Zero trust is a methodology of continuing to validate who you are, and you are who you say you are, and you're supposed to be here, and you have the appropriate rights and privileges to get to where you're trying to go.
So if I may, Adam, if El Chapo gets out of prison and puts on another shirt and decides to walk into a restaurant, zero trust would be the person at the front before sitting El Chapo at this restaurant being like, sir, I need to authenticate who you are. Is that zero trust?
Yeah. So another zero trust, another fun zero trust topical conversation we can have right now would be the idea of not to go political, but vaccine passports or negative COVID tests.
There you
right?
go.
A lot of people aren't trusting other people these days, and it's not fun, anyways. But just as an example, as you move throughout public, there are certain organizations that are kind of taking zero trust from the digital world to the physical world. So, and we all deal with that on how we deal with that. So, hey, show me your papers, or show me a negative test, or show me this. That's kind of what zero trust is hey, you've accessed my supermarket. You've walked in the front door of the supermarket. Hey, prove to me you are who you say you are, and prove to me you have the right to be here. Based on whatever rights and privileges you want to pretend do or do not exist. So that same concept of, hey, prove you are who you say you are, prove you're allowed to be here. You enable that through policy, through Active Directory controls, through things like zero trust for multi-factor authentication, right? So things like Duo or Okta or CASB solutions. Basically, you log in, your username and password, you're in the system, and then once you try to connect further, you go through maybe a multi-factor type scenario where it sends an alert to a different device, and you say, yes, I did log into that. Yes, I am who I say I am. Someone's not spoofing your credentials. All that type of stuff. So we've tied in Narcos season 3 with El Chapo, and vaccine passports and COVID into the zero trust conversation, molded it all together in a great analogy ball of wonderful.
Which was our goal at the outset. We were like, how can we bring all of these things together into one show? We did it completely unplanned. So look at that. Look at that.
Yep. Tying it all together.
So I think that's really important. I mean, jokes aside, that is really important, that zero trust really gives you the opportunity and permission to stop somebody if they're in your assets. If they're a bad actor, you can close that down very quickly and preserve your assets.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah, you got to have visibility to who's accessing your environment, who's accessing data, who's accessing your applications, but also it's a constant vigilance, right? You have to be constantly thinking ways that this can be spoofed. You have to be thinking of ways that it can be attacked. And VPN, I think the main point of the article is, hey, VPN's one tool. It's one tool to enable remote users, but the convenience is also a potential threat. Anytime you give up control or requirements or assets or any type of convenience can also be manipulated into a threat. So you got to have visibility of that, and you got to figure out, okay, I'm going to give people remote access to my machine. How am I going to validate that person is who they say they are, and how am I going to maintain that? So zero trust is a framework to help get you there. And it's not a, you can't go out and buy some zero trust application. You can't be like, oh, I want to go buy some Zero Trust. Like that's not the way it works.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Adam. That's really helpful. Anything else before we call it an episode? Oh, I should also mention that again, a lot of this stuff, if this seems overwhelming, if this seems like a daunting issue to tackle, hey, reach out to Quest Technology Management. We can help you. We can talk to you. No pressure consultations. So we are always accessible and we want to help. So again, zero pressure, but we can answer some questions and help you out. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Adam, anything? Well, you're watching Narcos, correct? That's what you're suggesting.
Well, I finished it. Finished up the Narcos, man. So I'm full Yellowstone right now. The only thing I'm watching on TV right now is Yellowstone. So that's my one guilty pleasure. Once a week, watch a little bit of Yellowstone. Good
Nice.
times.
I am. I'm going back and watching Seinfeld on Netflix, which is.
No.
You know what's neat is in Seinfeld, the episodes are very beautifully tied together if you watch them in order. They slightly reference other episodes. It's really, it's very impressive. So yeah,
It's almost like it was a popular show that did really well.
yeah, that's what I hear. So thank you so much for joining us. This has been Spilling the IT. We'll be back next week. Until then, have a great week. Bye.
Thanks, Paul.